I married a billionaire I had only met 3 times. It wasn't for love. It was because my father would lose everything if I said no.
The ceremony lasted 12 minutes. Adrian Kane barely looked at me. One measured glance during the vows, nothing more. That night, when everyone had gone, he closed the bedroom door and asked quietly, "Do you still remember the lake?" I told him I didn't know what he meant. It was almost true. Just a smear of gold water and sunlight that surfaced sometimes in dreams I never fully remembered by morning. He nodded once, like he'd expected that answer. "Then we'll speak of it another time." I had no idea that first night how long it would take him to keep that promise, or how much it would cost both of us when he finally did. That was the tone of the first month. Separate wings of the house. Polite dinners where he asked about my father's treatment and nothing else. I told myself I preferred it that way. I did not expect that first month to notice a car idling too long outside the estate gates on my drive back from visiting my father. There and then gone before I could get a clear look at the driver. I told myself it was nothing. I was wrong. The coffee first, exactly how I take it, a ratio I'd never mentioned to the staff. Then, in my third week, I came home from the hospital to find the small box of old photographs my father kept of my childhood disturbed. Not stolen, just moved, subtly, like someone had gone through them and put them back not quite correctly. I asked the staff. No one admitted to touching them. I counted the photographs that night, one by one, certain something was missing. Nothing was. But one photograph, the one of me at 7, standing on a dock I didn't recognize, wasn't the one I remembered from that box at all. It had been replaced. I got sick in my 6th week, a bad flu, feverish and miserable. I woke at some point in the night to find Adrian asleep in the chair beside my bed, still in yesterday's shirt, having clearly not left the room at all. "You didn't have to do that," I said, my voice wrecked. "I know," he said, nothing else. But he didn't leave the chair until morning. It was during that fever, half asleep, that the first fragment came. Not a full memory, just a sensation. Water, cold against my skin.
The distinct, specific feeling of holding my breath too long. "Why do you keep asking about that lake?" I finally managed. His hand, resting the cool cloth against my forehead, went still. "Because you saved my life there, when we were children." I asked him what else he remembered. He looked at me for a long moment, and I understood, from the way his jaw tightened, that whatever came next, he wasn't ready to say it yet. The following week, I was certain, for the first time, that I was being followed. A man in a gray coat, at the pharmacy where I filled my father's prescriptions. The same man, or one dressed identically, outside my old apartment building. I told myself I was imagining it, until I came home to find my bedroom window unlatched, though I distinctly remembered locking it that morning.
The romance between us did not happen because of gratitude, or duty, or a debt he felt he owed a girl who once pulled him from water. It happened in ordinary moments, the kind neither of us noticed accumulating until they'd become something neither of us could undo. He watched me teach once, at a children's shelter his company sponsored, and I caught him afterward looking at me like he'd discovered something he hadn't expected to find. I watched him with his grandmother, frail and fading, reading aloud from a book she could no longer follow, his voice gentle, in a register I'd never heard him use in a boardroom. We danced once, in an empty ballroom after a gala had ended. No music at all, just his hand at my waist and mine at his shoulder, and neither of us in any hurry to let go. Those were the moments, not the debt, not the gratitude.
Those small, accumulating hours were what made me start to understand that whatever this marriage had begun as, it was no longer only that. The second fragment came on a visit to the lake cabin.
The actual dock this time, weathered gray wood beneath my feet, and the sudden, disorienting certainty that I'd stood in this exact spot before, small, afraid, water soaking through my shoes. I remember the dock, I told Adrian that night. Just the dock. Nothing else yet. He took my hand across the table. Take whatever time you need. I didn't tell him, that night, about the man in the great coat I'd seen again on the road leading to the cabin. This time, he hadn't been watching the cabin at all. He'd been watching me. I nearly left, somewhere in the middle of all of it. I packed a bag one night, quietly, telling myself I needed distance to think clearly. I got as far as the front hallway before Adrian found me there. "Don't," he said. Just that. "I don't know who I am in this house," I told him, my voice breaking. "Everyone knows a version of me I can't remember." He took my face in both hands. "I'm not asking you to stay because of a contract anymore, Emily. I'm asking because I don't know how to do any of this without you." I stayed, but I kept the divorce papers, unsigned, in the bottom of a drawer for 3 more weeks. Insurance against a truth I still wasn't sure I could survive. The third fragment came violently, in a dream that felt more like memory than sleep. A boy, smaller than me, thrashing beneath the surface. My own hands, small too, reaching for him.
I woke gasping. Adrian was already at my door. "I remember pulling someone out of the water," I told him. "A boy." His face went very still. That was me. "Then who else was there?" I asked. "Because in the dream, Adrian, you weren't the only one on that dock." He didn't answer, but something in his eyes told me he already knew exactly who I meant. It was around this time I learned the thing Adrian had never told a single interviewer in 16 years. We were walking near the estate's ornamental pond when I suggested, lightly, that we take the little rowboat out. He stopped walking entirely. "I don't go in water," he said. "Not since the lake. I haven't gone in past my knees in 16 years. "You mean you're afraid?" "I mean I nearly died there," he said. "And some part of me never fully climbed back out." I asked him gently what had happened after I pulled him from the water. He looked out at the pond for a long time before he spoke. "My father died that same afternoon," he said. "And I've spent 16 years being told exactly how. I came home from visiting my father to find the lake cabin's side door forced open, the small study inside searched, drawers pulled out, floorboards pried up in one corner. It made sense in a terrible way once I understood it later. Whoever was looking assumed what I would have assumed too, that if evidence from that summer existed anywhere, it would still be at the lake, where it had all happened. They were wrong, but it would take us weeks longer to find out just how wrong. That same evening, the hospital called. My father's security footage, the entire week of his admission, had been erased. Someone hadn't just been watching me. They'd been inside the one place I thought was safe. We didn't find answers easily. It took weeks. Old newspaper archives, a retired detective named Harris who remembered more than the official report ever recorded. A boat mechanic who mentioned, almost in passing, a second visitor on the property the week of the accident. I found Harris myself, in the end, living 2 towns over. A man who'd carried a guilt he'd never spoken aloud to anyone. He looked at me for a long moment before he asked the only question that mattered. "Did your father ever tell you the truth about that summer?" I told him my father had never told me anything at all. That turned out to be only half true. Because before my father remembered anything, I saw the gray coat one last time.
He was outside my father's hospital window, the same week the footage disappeared. I nearly called security. Instead, on some instinct I still don't fully understand, I went down and confronted him myself. He didn't run. He just looked at me, tired, like a man who'd been waiting to be caught. "I'm not the one you should be afraid of," he said. "I was hired to watch you, not to hurt you." Hired by who? He hesitated long enough that I already knew the answer before he said her name. Elaine Kane. 6 years ago. My job was simple. The moment your memory came back, I was supposed to tell her.
The fourth fragment arrived during an actual storm, full and vivid and complete. Rain on the dock, a raised voice, a struggle, a splash that wasn't a child falling in. I told Adrian everything I remembered, shaking, and he held me through it without a single word until I'd stopped trembling. The fifth fragment came a week later, and this one I didn't want. A woman's voice, calm in a way that made my skin crawl, telling a small, frozen boy on the shore that his father had simply had an accident and that it would be best for everyone if no one asked further questions. I recognized it instantly. From a dozen family dinners. From a hand brushing my hair back like my own mother used to. "It's your mother," I told Adrian, and watched something in him break quietly in two. "That's not possible," he said. "Say it again. Say it wasn't her." I couldn't, because it was. I want to tell you the truth came out easily after that. It didn't. Adrian didn't speak to me for 2 full days. Not out of anger at me. I understood that, even then. But because believing me meant losing the mother he'd spent 16 years grieving beside. The only parent he had left. "You're asking me to believe she let my father die," he said, the first time he did speak. "And then spent 16 years raising me like nothing happened."
"I'm not asking you to believe anything," I said. "I'm asking you to help me find out." He didn't answer for a long time. Then he nodded, once, like it cost him something physical to do it. Elaine found out we were looking before we found anything at all. She came to me alone one afternoon while Adrian was at the office. Sat across from me at the kitchen table where she'd once taught me her late husband's soup recipe and took both my hands in hers, the way she always had. "Whatever you think you remember," she said gently, "I need you to understand what it would do to this family if you were wrong. Adrian has already lost one parent. Don't take the other one from him over a memory that isn't even whole yet." It didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like love. That was what frightened me most. 2 nights later, the study where Harris's notes in the old journal were being kept caught fire. Small, contained, extinguished before it spread, but enough to destroy half of what we'd gathered. The fire inspector called it faulty wiring. Adrian and I both knew better. "She's not going to confess," I told him. "Not unless we already have everything before we ask her again." "Then we find everything," he said. And for the first time since the voice memory, I heard my husband again instead of a grieving son. It was my own father, in the end, who gave us the last piece, the one Harris's notes couldn't.
I sat by his hospital bed and asked him directly, for the first time in my life, what he remembered about that summer. He was quiet for a long time. "You came home soaking wet and screaming," he finally said, "carrying a metal box you wouldn't let go of.
I didn't know what was in it. I only knew that every time you saw it afterward, you screamed again. What did you do with it? I whispered. I buried it, he said, in our own backyard. I thought I was protecting you from whatever put that look in your eyes. I didn't understand I was just leaving you alone with it. We dug it up that same night, by flashlight, my hands shaking too hard to be much help at all. Rusted, but intact. Photographs, correspondence, a single line in Elaine's own handwriting. The one piece of proof that had been sitting 11 feet from my childhood bedroom window the entire time. When Adrian read it, his face turned completely white. She knew, he whispered. She knew, and she let me believe it was an accident for 16 years.
We confronted her together, in the same quiet study where I'd first found her old journal. She didn't deny it once the pieces were finally laid before her. I loved you both, she said quietly. That part was never a lie. She had discovered that summer that her husband intended to expose a fraud within the company that would have implicated her directly. The argument on the dock had never been meant to end in death, but it had. And in the panic that followed, she had built a version of that day everyone else could live inside, including, eventually, herself. You let me believe I imagined all of it, I said. You let me think I was broken. I know, she whispered, and I have hated myself for it every single day since. The company didn't survive the truth. Adrian sold what remained rather than build the rest of his life on top of his father's death.
I searched 15 years, he told me, his hands framing my face. Every birthday, I went back to that lake, hoping the girl who saved me would come back. I stopped believing I ever would. Then I saw your name on a school fundraiser list, and I couldn't breathe for an hour. I'm not forgetting anymore, I told him. I didn't stop him when he kissed me that time. We went back to the lake together the following spring. Adrian stood at the edge of the dock, rigid, the way he always did near water now. I knelt at the underside of the old wood, my fingers finding a small carved stone tucked into a gap that had somehow survived 15 years of storms. When we were children, I said, holding it up, you cried because you couldn't swim. I told you if you were ever scared again, I'd leave something here so you'd know I was coming back for you. He stared at the stone like it might dissolve if he looked away. I reached for his hand instead. Come with me. Emily, I'll hold on the whole time, I said. I promise. We walked into the shallows together, slowly, his hand crushing mine, his breath ragged with 16 years of fear. He stopped when the water reached his knees, shaking. I've got you, I said. You're not alone in it this time. He took one more step, then another, until we stood waist deep in water that had once nearly taken everything from him. Do you still remember the lake? He asked, echoing our wedding night, his voice unsteady. I looked around at the water, gold in the late afternoon light, nothing like the storm-dark version that had haunted us both. No, I said, because it isn't the place where I lost my childhood anymore. I reached for his other hand. It's the place where I found you.
And if you want more stories like this one, subscribe to Behind Closed Doors. New confessions every week.